Probably. They're very good at encouraging heart attacks, surprise heart attacks in healthy people. If someone drops dead of a heart attack, or in America dies in a plane accident, a politician who is anti the agenda, those are the sort of questions you need to ask.
Okay, well, obviously these are your claims and certainly not made by this programme, I have to say. Okay, Vicky says, I don't understand why there are always documents to show this stuff. If it is that powerful, why bother leaving evidence?
The evidence is absolutely overwhelming, and the BBC should be doing this programme, should have done it 30 years ago when the first treaty came along. But everything that I'm saying is happening is in EU treaties. There have been 6 EU treaties passed by Parliament and signed by the Queen.
Well, the first one was the one that Ted Heath was involved in.
Correct.
And we were told that we were going to enter a common market.
Yeah, we were lied to. If you read secret documents released from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, which was the internal government illegally foisting the EU on us. But under the 30-year rule, they've now released these documents, and it's absolutely clear that Ted Heath knew he was abolishing Britain and expected the nation to be abolished before the end of this century.
Well, if these documents have been revealed, why doesn't the press write about it? Why don't they say, you know, that was the agenda from 30 years ago? Or 40, is it 30 or 40 years ago?
Right, the press is controlled by a mixture of Freemasons and common purpose, and they never reveal the agenda. But these documents, you know, they've all got numbers like FCO 30/1048 and FCO 26/1212.
That's what, Foreign and Commonwealth Office or something?
Correct, yeah. These documents reveal exactly what the government was doing, like they were trailing Enoch Powell and getting advance copies of his speeches and ridiculing him in public, making him look ridiculous. And you know, they were tracking the anti-common market lead. They had civil servants writing into newspapers pretending they were members of the public, lauding the EU. So they spent a total of £461,000 on this campaign to deceive the public, a disinformation campaign.
How much?
461,000, according to FCO 30/1215.
Well, this is 1976, is it? This sort of...
No, this is 1970. So in today's money, you're probably talking about sort of 40 million. So we must assume that that campaign continued, because document FCO 26/1215 is a summary of everything that they did and how to do it better in the future. So we must assume, and they haven't released any more documents, that that campaign is still going today. And they must be spending 100 million on it to deceive us.
Well, I mean, these are very serious claims. Let's look at...
no, they're not claims. These are what the government documents say. They're not my claims. These are stated by the government.
But why would they release them then if they're so outrageous?
Because they really thought that in 30 years' time it would all be done and dusted.
Well, it's very, very nearly is, isn't it?
Well, it is, but the only good thing about the EU is the timescales always slip a few years. So Ted Heath really thought in 1970 that in 30 years' time Britain would no longer exist. Therefore, the 30-year rule was okay. But of course, here we are, 2010. The nation of Britain was actually only abolished in legal terms, very dodgy legal terms, a year ago.
You don't mean the 1st of January this year? You mean...
The nation of Britain was abolished on the 1st of January 2009.
2009, okay.
By the Lisbon Treaty.
Okay. So, and isn't something else going to happen still? Aren't we going to lose even more power at some other date this year, or...?
Well, now it's just a case of the EU consolidating its power. How quickly can it do that? How quickly can it put our own police and Italian, German, French police on street corners with machine guns? Already, all our politicians since the year 2005 have been protected by machine guns. If you go into any MP's office in Westminster, you'll see machine guns. If you go to Portcullis House, which is the main office of MPs in Westminster. There are police with machine guns. You cannot run a dictatorship without protecting your glorious leaders with machine guns.
Okay, so this abolition of the UK, what does it mean? What does it really mean? Does it mean that, I mean, right now we're heading for a general election, aren't we, in May this year, probably May the 6th?
It's not really a general election because all the political parties are controlled by the European Union. The Conservatives have been EU-controlled since the 1960s, the Labour and Lib Dems since 1985, and the BNP and the UKIP leaderships are controlled by the EU as well.
Well, you stood as a UKIP MP, didn't you?
Yes, and I stood for the leadership of UKIP as well. But I really am anti-EU, so they couldn't let me get anywhere.
You know, people will say, listening to this, and with due respect, David, they'll say, well, that's sour grapes, isn't it? You didn't get the job, so now you're dissing them.
No. This is just a fact. I mean, over the last 30 years, they have moved thousands of people up into positions of power on the basis of the fact that they're pro-EU. So if you want to be an MEP, you couldn't get in without going through the shortlist system, the party list system. And you couldn't get through the party list system unless you were pro-EU. And that is how they got a majority of 138 MPs on the 21st of January 2008 for the Lisbon Treaty and to abolish this nation. And they only debated it for 2 weeks, and the Queen signed it into law on the 19th of June 2008, and the Lisbon Treaty abolishing our nation came into effect on the 1st of January 2009. Now you're asking, where do we go from here? Well, shall I just... Do you mind if I go back into the past a bit?
Not at all.
The European Union was not founded by Monet or Salter or Schumann or all the people they try to invent and pretend as being these wonderful benefactors. It was started off by Hermann Goering, who made a speech in 1940 establishing something he called the European Economic Community. And in 1942, there was the first conference of the EEC at Berlin University.
This is during the war, then, obviously.
Yes, this was the Nazis.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that Hermann Goering was a Nazi, yes. What I'm saying is he had this conference in Berlin during the Second World War. So obviously none of the Allies attended. Well, I imagine they didn't.
No, but it was at that conference that the EEC was set in stone. That's where they came up with all the documents were produced then. The common monetary policy, the common economic policy, the common fisheries policy, the common agricultural policy. The whole thing was set in stone at that conference in Berlin in 1942, and it hasn't changed since, except one thing.
What was the one thing?
I haven't got there yet.
Okay.
In 1943, von Ribbentrop held the first summit of the European Union.
He was a German chancellor, wasn't he? Or
Yes, deeply involved with Nancy Astor and the royal family, our royal family.
at the Gotha Saxe-Coburgs.
Correct.
Otherwise known as Windsor.
Correct. The Germans. So 13 nations, not us, attended the first summit of the EEC in Germany under von Ribbentrop. And in 1944, at the Rotshaus Hotel in Strasbourg, the more enlightened members of the Nazi High Command had a meeting with big German companies included, like IG Farben, where they commissioned the European Union to carry forward German ambitions because they could see defeat looming. And Hitler himself commissioned the Deutsche Verteidigungsdienst Intelligence Department to control future development of the European Union. And in 1946, that one change you wanted to know about, you couldn't sell Nazism to anyone in 1946, so they switched the European Union from a Nazi to a communist basis, and it's been communist ever since. And in 1958, Ted Heath, Geoffrey Rippon,